Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome back to this episode of Tools for Transitioning Humanitarians. And here is your host, Salon Monova. And today I want to talk about 12 transitioning mistakes that I have observed a lot in humanitarians in my own journey, of course, as well. And that's why I wanted to bring all of this to your awareness in numbering so that it's easier to navigate, which does not mean that there is a hierarchy to it. So it can show up in any different ways, and then how you can navigate those mistakes instead of just keep following those mistakes, right? So at least you are able to see and be aware that, oh, what if that is a mistake? And when I say mistake, it's an action that we take that may be costly for us, right? So the way that it may cost us is emotionally, it may cost us money wise, it may cost us energy, time, and that's what I really mean by mistake. And obviously, it's very subjective, right? But I really like my hope with this episode is that so that you are able to recognize it, but also you are able to then do something about it on time so that it doesn't cause you a lot of suffering. That's really what I want to get out of this episode. And also, I would love for you to not only recognize that these might be mistakes to avoid, but also how to solve for it without following them, how to understand them, why that's happening. And the more you understand, then you start seeing why are you doing it that way and what to do not in order to stop doing it that way, right? So that's really the purpose of this episode. Okay, so I have gathered 12, and these are again the common ways that I see humanitarians do this to themselves, and there might be more. So maybe in the future I will bring even more aspects of it, or maybe we can even like compress it to less. But I would like for you to recognize them as separate things so that it's easier for you to recognize if you're doing this. So the first one that I want to bring to your awareness is uh, the mistake that I see is quitting their job before starting something. A lot of the times we believe that it needs to be a cold turkey. I need to just finish here or avoid all of this, or like I just need to get out of here at any cost. I can't just take it anymore. And then it's very tempting for us to just go and quit and then go to something else, believing that I have the apartment that I can rely on, so at least I don't need to pay rent. I have the savings, or I can live with my loved ones, whatever it is, and then we just quit. And I have done it myself, and it would be weird for me to say don't do the things that I have done it. But also, I want to say that in the loving way of how that might be very challenging for many of us, especially if we haven't really learned to deal with our emotions. I have learned to deal with my emotions before transitioning, so that's why I was able to navigate through a lot of the turmoil that I went through after quitting my job before I had anything else stable. But for many of us, it might be a very hard thing to handle, and uncertainty and not having the structure in place, not having a lot of things in place, and start applying for another job or creating your own job, it may take some time, right? So count at least 1 year that it may take, or maybe even more. So therefore, ideally, I would always like to suggest to people not to quit your job before finding something else or before deciding what to do next, and start building whatever it is that you are building without quitting. Now, if you have this urge to quit before you have something else that's lined up for you, the best way you could handle this urge is by understanding why do you want to do that. And there might be many reasons for you to do that, right? So it might be because you are not no longer wanting to go to a new duty station. It might be because your boss is keep demanding things that you don't want to, or keep treating you in a particular way that you don't want to, and you just want to get out of this place. Whatever those might be, I would love to suggest, instead of quitting your job, start solving those problems as much as you can in that environment. That way you gain such an experience of not just leaving the place without resolving those things, but also you start realizing how much you are powerful to solve those problems, without quitting it on yourself, how much you're able to solve them. And also, when you are leaving to something else, you will be able to solve other problems better as well. And that's so beneficial either way. And that's what I have done it as well. In the last years of my humanitarian job, I consciously decided to solve all the problems that I believed I had, like problems of not having time for myself and for taking care of myself, problems of feeling emotionally drained the whole time, problems of having difficulty with certain colleagues and how to solve all of this. I have solved for them in that environment before leaving. So I would always tell myself that I haven't left because I just wanted to avoid them, but I have left because I wasn't sure the impact that I wanted to do was available, possible within the constraints of that environment, right? So that's why the first is don't quit before creating and finding something else that you want to do. The second is don't be in indecision. And this is something that yes, this is something that I keep seeing a lot. And indecision may not be something very easy for us to recognize, right? Because it may sound like, I'm just searching for answers. It may sound like I'm just consulting these people and talking these people. And I have, in fact, talked to many humanitarians who wanted to know my experience and wanted to know how I'm doing it, how I have been successful, how I have been able to replicate my salary and all of these things. And I have shared about this on many, many episodes as well. But I see this, that whenever we are in this surge mode, there are two ways that might be happening, right? So either we are searching for because we're afraid, and therefore we're trying to find a safety blanket, so to say. And in that case, our fear will not be stilled because we are essentially afraid that things can go wrong, right? So therefore, we just keep searching forever and ever and keep delaying what we really want to. So you need to be able to recognize for yourself, are you searching for those answers because you're afraid that it will not work and everything will fall apart, da 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 da? Or are you searching for answers because you have specific things that you are building and planning and executing, and on that search, there is a missing information that you would like to get answers to? So these are two things. And I would love for you to, like, when you keep being in the searching mode, in surveying mode, in the not making decision, but just keep consuming podcast or consuming whatever the information, you notice that, are you doing it because you're just afraid that if you leave XYZ happens, or are you doing it because you are crafting your plan of how to transition and how to make that successful? If it's the latter, great, then you will need only specific particular information. But if it's the first one, then you need to address the fear behind it first. So that fear, if it's not addressed, meaning that you will not trust your decision, you will not trust what you're going to do will work. If you don't trust or believe that wherever you're going will be better option than where you are, if you don't trust those things, then no matter how much you try to gather information, your fear will continue staying at that rate, or maybe it will even grow depending on who you ask, because other people tend to give their projected fearful opinions of how you shouldn't do XYZ, and therefore you just continue compiling fear. And that's what I would like for you to avoid it. So that's why whenever you are in indecision, you need to recognize that you might be in indecision. You might be also recognize that this is coming from fear, and then how you can address the fear. And the only way I know how to address fear is by building the muscle of trust. So therefore, your work in that moment is not really keep searching for more or surveying more people, but rather studying yourself, meaning that allowing that fear to feel in you, understanding, getting to know that fear, at the same time, bringing the antidote of trust and how you can build trust more so you can make a powerful decision out of trust and not out of fear. Okay, so that's the second one. Third one is don't put a lot of pressure on where you're going. Excuse me. And this is particularly important to people who tend to have perfectionistic tendencies. And the way that perfectionistic tendencies shows up is that everything needs to be 100% sure. Everything needs to be great once we leave. When we are going to the new destination, wherever that is, it has to be fulfilling all the things that we want. It's basically we are searching for, if it's not all perfect, then I can't go for it, right? That's really the expectations, that the pressure that we put for ourselves. And then therefore, because we are putting so much pressure on ourselves, then we continue making the second mistake, which is not making a decision. We just continue being in indecision, right? So therefore, we need to learn to recognize when it's a healthy way for us to say, these are the things that matter to me, these are the things that I value, I want to have them, or I want to be able to have them, and these are the things that I may not know, and that's okay, or it doesn't need to be great and 100% or whatever. So the example of this would be that some humanitarians tell me that they want to have the job that is so much like so much big responsibilities, or they want to have a job where they are so fulfilled and adrenaline is high, and at the same time it's very stable. And then they may also say about the relationships, right? So this person needs to be perfect in this way, or this location or the house needs to be so perfect in this way, and then describe that all to themselves. And then they just say that all of this to make it happen is no way possible. And then they just keep not making a decision and then committing and executing the decision. And that's what keeps happening. So therefore, we need to understand for ourselves when we are in that trend of everything needs to be perfect. I need to have the perfect job, the perfect house, the perfect spouse or partner, and all of this needs to be in place, and then maybe I will think about it. Or even like one of the elements that needs to be perfect, and we just keep pressuring that. Or even some people pressure themselves about, I have to have like very clear idea of what that is and how that is, and exactly how much I'm going to be earning. And these are the things that will just put a lot of pressure on us. And therefore, we may not even know the answers to those questions, right? So therefore, what we need to then understand is, why are we trying to make everything so perfect, right? Again, we're afraid of, if it's not perfect, then I'm leaving this place, I'm losing all the things that I have built so far, and then if I'm not trading it for a perfect scenario, then I'm losing everywhere, like both sides. And that's, I think, where the pressure is a lot, right? So when we see this, that this is what we're doing to ourselves, that we are the one to putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, what we need to understand is that when we are under pressure, we're likely to not make any decision. And even if we make a decision, we likely to backtrack. And we are also likely to be continuously afraid of executing our decision or making a decision or thinking about how all of this is going to work out. And a lot of this overthinking might not be healthy at all. So that's why what we want to then know is, okay, I may not be able to know the answers to everything 100%. I may not have the perfect job or perfect this and perfect that. But if it's not perfect, whatever my definition of perfect is, right? What is important to me? So maybe it is important for you to have a job that allows you to have other parts of your life. So building healthy relationship with your job. Maybe it is building healthy relationship with another person, right? Or maybe it is um, having a healthy relationship with money, whatever it is that I would love to have after transitioning, or this is what I would value after transitioning. And then you can actually start already working towards it now, even before transitioning. So for instance, how could I now have a healthy relationship with my work in the way that I don't need to take work home if I don't want to. I don't need to take my thoughts about about work to home, but rather how do I already start having the relationship with my loved ones or create relationships, right? All of this, you can already start doing it without um, pressuring yourself that it all has to like work out, it all has to be in place, and then I will do something about it, right? So the third one is, as I said, that putting a lot of pressure on you needing to know the answers, basically, or you needing to have everything perfectly in place, right? The fourth one is don't keep searching for a guarantee. And this is the similar to the one that I had mentioned previously, but I think the way that this shows up is that we just believe that someone needs to give us a guarantee. I think this is something that is very weird, but also I think a lot of us do that, especially when we are afraid of uncertainty. We believe that someone there needs to give us a guarantee that all of this, what we're going to do, needs to work out. And when I point this out to people that we are the only ones who can guarantee ourselves things, right? We can't really ask anyone else to guarantee it. We can't really, like, even at some point, we used to believe that the organization that we worked for, they guaranteed our um, like permanent stability or whatever. And I thankfully have never experienced that. And the way that I say thankfully is because I've never had any permanent contract for me to say, okay, I can never be fired, right? But I think there are people who have believed that organization would take care of them forever. And then we are now knowing that that's not always the case. And therefore, we know that even organizations that we used to believe that is so unfallible or so um, gigantic or stable, and then not securing funds necessary at times, showed us that it's not always a guarantee. So therefore, the only guarantee that we can give might be ourselves. And if we are afraid of giving ourselves guarantee, and if we're afraid that, well, it's too much pressure for me to hold myself accountable for giving myself guarantee, we need to also get curious about why. Why are we not wanting to give ourselves guarantee? Because again, we're afraid or we cannot trust our own abilities to make things happen, right? Then the question is, why are we afraid of our own abilities, or why are we not trusting our own abilities? And then if we say that we are going to guarantee ourselves and then things don't work out, yes, and then things may not work out, how do we then get back to making it work instead of just making that mean that's the end of the story and that's it, right? Because sometimes maybe things don't work out and we need to be able to then solve it instead of just giving up and say, well, I should just go back now to what I know best, or just stay and feeling stuck. That's not what we want anyway. So that's why we need to understand that guarantee is again something that we are seeking because we're afraid of failing. And then if we're afraid of failing, then we need to understand what can we do about that fear instead of keep searching for guarantee somewhere else. Because guarantee, as I said, cannot be given by other people. It can be given by ourselves if we choose to. If we don't, we always can trust ourselves to go forward to what we want and learning how to solve problems along the way, which they will be. And how are we going to solve them in the way that we don't just give up? So the fourth one is don't transition because of avoiding problems. And this is something that I have mentioned already in previous ones. And I wanted to specifically mention this because I think this is something that we are aware of it. But when in the moment, when we're feeling frustrated, drained, exhausted, hating all of this, then it becomes so much easier for us to just say, I'm out of here. I don't want to. I don't care. And all of to the other extremes, right? So we tend to have a lot of extremes of either amazing and positive, everything great, to everything is shit and I just need to get out of it, get out of it. And again, I have been in this situation once, 2013, and I used to believe that if I just leave all of this place, if I just leave this environment and go to somewhere else, all of this will not happen. And then lo and behold, it actually was worse because now when I quit at the time, right? I was not only struggling with all of my problems that were not solved, but also I was struggling with finding a job and panicking about how, excuse me, I can't really sustain myself. And all of that could have been avoided by first trying to solve the problems if I had the capacity. Of course, I should make a caveat here, right? So because sometimes we may not be able to solve of those problems because we're heavily burnt out or we are in depression. And in those cases, maybe it's the best thing that we just leave and give ourselves grace and relief and taking care of our health. But I'm talking about in general people who are just wanting to get out of believing that somewhere else will be better. Let's not do that because somewhere else may not be better. And even if it is, these problems continue with us in our head, and we need to solve them at some point sooner or later. And we may as well solve it while we are there so that we then gain the identity of being the person who can solve problems without escaping them, without fearing them. And the more confidence we get in solving that type of problems, the stronger we get, and the more we are able to solve problems going forward. The sixth one is don't just keep listening to others' fears. And this is something that I wanted to mention specifically because I have heard from several of my clients recently. They were talking about their grand plans of transitioning and going somewhere else. And then people who they talked to, they were all saying, are you sure? Why? And maybe you shouldn't do that, it's too late. Or maybe are you sure you're going to do this when you are in this age, or whatever the things that they were telling. And then these clients were telling me, excuse me, my throat is getting dry very fast. So these clients were then telling me that, well, what am I going to do? I want to do this, but at the same time, whenever I keep talking to other people, they seem to say that it may not be a great idea. And I know that I don't need to listen to them, but I somehow am afraid, right? So this is what happens. And I'm not saying that don't listen to people in general or like anyone, but I would like for you to Also notice when other people's fears come projected to you, then if you have the fear, then you just match your fear with their fear, and then you just compile and grow that fear. And when we keep growing that fear, we just need to be aware that that's what we're wanting to do and not just doing it out of default, right? And in that moment, what we really want to understand is, okay, I am afraid of all of these things. And then if other people share their fear with me, then I am adding those fears together. And now I'm even more insecure as to whether I want to go or not. And in that moment, maybe the best way for you to handle it is, if I really believe this, that I would do this, right? I would go for this transition. If I really believe this, how would I perceive their fearful projections? Probably very calmly, probably not really even internalizing it, probably not really entertaining, indulging it, or maybe you wouldn't even ask for their opinions about it, right? But if you are if you are just compiling their fear and your fear, then obviously that shows that you're not really believing that where you're going is going to be what you like and what you want and all of these things working out. Then your work is not so much, even if you let's say you listen to them and you gather their fear and your fear, now you need to still work on believing in that thing that you're going for. And if you're not believing, then you can also ask yourself why, right? Because then it doesn't really matter what their fears are. Your fear is basically that this is not going to work out. Then we want to understand why we're not really believing the thing that we're wanting, right? And also, why are we wanting to use other people's fears as a way for us not to go forward to what we want? Why do we want to use their fears as a way to stop ourselves from going for what we want? Right? So these are the things that I would like for you to reflect on to see what are the true answers that come up. Because my goal is that you don't use other people's fears as a way to stop going for what you want to, or you don't use your own fears to stop going for what you want to, but rather making decision out of trust, whether this is the decision you want to make or not, and what to do about it, right? That's really my goal. And my fear is that if we keep just listening and gathering everyone's fears, then our brain will at some point argue that, well, there's really no point in me even considering, because everyone thinks it's not going to work. But everyone does not know that. And a lot of things can work against everyone's fears. My example in particular, there are lots of other examples of amazing success stories in life where we have went for what we wanted against everyone's fears. And because we believed in it so much that we made it work. So therefore, you could be one of those people as well, if you are aware of what you're asking people of and how are you using their fears. The next one, let me just check yeah. The seventh is, don't expect to figure out everything. And I think I mentioned that in the previous one. And the way that I wanted to make it separate is because your brain will want to keep saying, I need to figure out this, I need to figure out that, I need to figure out that, da, 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 da. And then it just keeps being like eternal figuring out things. And that also robs you of actually taking actions, right? Excuse me. So therefore, I think we want to understand what is the things that is very essential for us to figure out, and how many other things that we may not know how to figure out, and we need to trust that, excuse me, we will figure out along the way. Because imagine if before me transitioning, I told myself that I need to figure out how to replicate my UN salary, otherwise I'm not leaving, then I would never leave. I would have never left, right? That would be the reality. And if I had done that, then I wouldn't have ever figured out without the UN structure how to do it on my own. I wouldn't have never figured out because I was in the UN. So therefore, while being there and figuring out the UN salary outside of it, I was not allowed legally, but also even if I illegally tried it, I wouldn't have known it because I would always rely on that safety net of the my salary, and therefore I wouldn't have possibly figured it out um, on my own. So therefore, the fact that leaving the UN and like not knowing the answers to this, but believing that I would replicate my salary anyway, and believing that I could do that was enough for me then to leave some of the answers unanswered. And then leaving and then figuring out was very useful thing to say. And when I'm saying it, I'm cognizant of how you may say that it's a bit, what is it? Contradictory to the first mistake that I told you about. Don't quit before finding and creating something that you really want. And here is the way that it doesn't contradict is figuring out. Oftentimes, our brains pose as if to say it needs to be in place, meaning that for instance, if I use the salary example, my brain might say, well, unless you already have earned UN salary outside of your UN job, then you can't really leave. That's how figuring out shows up, at least the way that I have been coaching people, that whenever I ask them what is figuring out looks like, is that when everything is in place. But it's okay that it's not everything in place. It's okay that some of the things we figure out after quitting, and that's also how probably it will show up anyway. But in the first case, I said about at least like testing and knowing that this is going to work out in the direction that you want to, right? And that's when you can quit. And in this mistake that I'm suggesting for you to avoid is when you get into the perfectionistic tendency of everything is being in place and you knowing exactly how to do this, and then quitting or leaving the job, and that may not always work. So therefore, knowing enough and knowing that what you're going to do is being tested or has been tested by you, that might be a better way to leave, and then everything else you will figure out along the way. So then the eighth one is don't transition because of disappointment. And as I said, this is very similar to the avoiding other feelings, but disappointment is something very, I think, sneaky that I wanted to bring a separate attention to it. And the reason why I say it's sneaky is because oftentimes I think we don't really realize that we are acting under the disappointment residues, under the residues of disappointment. And because we don't really realize it, we then make drastic decisions, drastic changes to how we're transitioning, and that may not serve our best, highest goals. So that's why we need to really get instead fine tuned to understand how disappointment feels like. And disappointment often in my body at least feels like almost not wanting to do anything, not really mattering, or wanting to go for very strong emotions like adrenaline or like emergency type of emotions, or um, wanting to the disappointment can also feel like very unnoticeable. It's fine. I keep doing this, but I'm also like, does this really make sense? Maybe I should do something else. It has a very like different types of taste depending on who you talk to, and therefore in those moments, either where we're seeking for strong emotions or we are trying to get away from feeling a certain way, or we are just saying, well, I don't know, right? This type of like emotional states. And in these moments, making decisions might be not useful. So that's why I really like want to urge that whenever you're making decision to transition, think about what feeling I want to make this decision from. And I would love for you to rely on a very powerful, uh, positive emotion to make the decision from, such as confidence, such as trust, such as deep or desire to do this. These are the feelings I would love for you to make a decision from, and not from this lingering, unknown, uncertain, I guess I'm all right kind of emotional state. So the ninth one is don't delay or procrastinate. And this is something that I also want to make it separate because I think we often don't know when we are delaying or procrastinating. We don't really recognize it, or even if we recognize it, we just believe that nothing can be done about it. And this is where I would like for you to recognize how you might be delaying living the life you want to by, for instance, grieving a lot about the things that's happening or that you are leaving, which is one of my clients currently going through, that she left the duty station and she is recovering from a physical injury, like treatment, but at the same time, she has a lot of this grieving of how it didn't go the way she wanted in the last assignment, and therefore this type of like grieving is necessary, but at the same time, if we're not careful and we just continue indulging in that grief, that will be the experience of our lives, right? Therefore we also keep delaying doing and going for what we want to. So that's why we need to recognize, why are we not able to make a decision, what are the emotions that we need to process to make a decision, and what specific emotions they are, and being intentional about processing them and going to the other side of it instead of just being too much in the indulging mode, right? So that's why I wanted to bring this as a ninth mistake. The 10th mistake is don't keep being back and forth. And this is something that I have done a lot in my transitioning in the first time. And I would like to suggest for you to avoid it. And the way that back and forth may looks like is when you keep making a decision and then going forward with that decision, and then in the middle just quit and then come back and do the other thing that you know already how to do it, and then again going wanting to go back and doing it. And sometimes it may be necessary if you have been building up your fear too much, your fear is too hard, then you may need to loosen up by going a bit further with your decision and then coming back, and then that might be necessary. But usually I would say, whatever the decision is, commit to it. Like, even if it gets very uncomfortable, commit to it. And if you notice yourself being back and forth, get curious as to why are you back and forth, and why are you not able to commit. And excuse me, there might be some answers that you find, such as, I don't really know how to commit. Then ask yourself how you will learn to commit and build that muscle of commitment. And if you just say, I'm afraid that this is not going to work, I'm afraid this is not going to work, then ask yourself, how do you want to get yourself out of the stuck mode, instead of just keep going back and forth, because back and forth will keep cementing or increasing fear of it not working out either way, or this feeling of you not being able to get out of the stuck mode, and keep reinforcing your identity that you don't know how to get out of that stuck mode, and therefore it's not going to be useful either way, right? The 11th ones is don't compromise. And the way that we tend to do that is we just say, okay, let me just go to the back home, let's say, and then transition back home and live with my loved ones, and then just do a whatever thing. And then as long as it pays me 2K per month or even 1K, I'm fine with it. I don't really care. This type of thing is not going to be useful, because once we do that, and then once we actually transition and then we start getting the 1 or 2K a month, and then we start asking questions of like, well, why did I do this? I'm not really satisfied with this job. I'm not really challenged at this job. I don't really like the pay and all of this. And then all the other problems starts happening. And that's why compromising in that sense is not useful. So therefore, when your brain wants to urge you to compromise and just get this job as long as it pays the dues kind of thing, challenge yourself of why do you want to just compromise, right? Maybe again, you're wanting to avoid things that you don't like to, or maybe you're just believing that after you transition, you will figure things out in a bigger way. If that is the case, then why not just transition to that bigger way instead of creating that buffer, right? And also think about, if you imagine yourself being back in that buffer, how much that will really affect you, and how much that will make you either go back to what you know, or you may want to go and create that new thing, but then you may be arguing with yourself how now you don't have the money to do that. You need to be careful, and then it creates a lot of those problems, right? So therefore, think about how you can get ready to create the big outcome that you're wanting, whatever that looks like, and how can you get ready for doing that now? Or um, if you didn't compromise, then what kind of transitioning you would like to go for, and start crafting and getting ready for it now. And the 12th, the last one, and this one is about don't keep expecting things to be hard. And this is, I think, the tendency that I certainly used to have. And I see a lot of my humanitarian clients tend to have it as well, which is we are so used to feeling like everything in life is so hard, and therefore this is going to be hard as well. And the reason why I'm saying avoid this labeling everything hard is A, it will become hard if we believe it. And B, if we keep labeling as hard, we're not going to want to do this. And C, if we keep labeling it as hard, we will not really understand the real challenges behind that label. We just keep avoiding it. We just keep telling ourselves, well, this is hard, and we don't do anything about it. And that's why instead of labeling hard, understand what hard means. How are you going to address it and approach it without labeling it as hard? And how can you make it easier or with ease? How would this work? And then go and solve those things instead of labeling it the way that your brain keeps naturally being afraid of it, and therefore making things even more complicated than it needs to be. Okay. Okay, my dears, I know that this episode is a lot longer than any other usually, but I hope that you have found so much value in listening and hearing these mistakes. And I'm really hoping that you will try to recognize, know how to deal with it, understand why you are wanting to do this, and then how to do it differently. And I would love to invite you to my group coaching, where we're exactly addressing all of these mistakes in detail and helping you equip with more tools of how to deal with them better. And this is only my group coaching is now for 2K for a lifetime of access. I have increased the prices, so I would love to work with you on getting ready to handle any of these mistakes and problems and get to making your big transitioning. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful week.